What do you say? So, hi everyone. My name is Claudia. I'm the Makeathon manager for the Design Engineering Society, and I'd like to give you all a warm welcome to this kickoff panel, Dwelling an Outlook on the Future of Our Homes. So this is the third Design Engineering Makeathon, and this year we're proud to have it co-organized with our friends from the Dyson Institute of Engineering Technology, also known as DIET. So Halima, if you want to jump in for a quick intro.
Yeah, hi. Hi, I'm Halima from the Dyson Institute. I'm a final year engineering student, and yeah, I just wanted to thank Imperial for inviting us to this event. It's the first time we as Dyson Institute are getting to do something like this, and we're really excited for the opportunity and looking forward to it. Thank you.
We're excited to have you guys on as well. Okay, so we're ready. The agenda for today is first we'll have from 6:30 to 7:30 a few keynote presentations. So we'll kick off with Mormedi, Trends of the Future of Homes. Then we'll have Dyson, Tewke, P&G with the 50-liter home project, and Dyson School of Design Engineering lecturer David on the future of privacy at home. So that will be a bit of the lineup for the keynote. And then after that, we hope to have 30 minutes for a panel discussion. So we'll share some questions and trying to get all of you guys' views on them. And then we'll have a Q&A from the audience. So we'll try to monitor both the YouTube comments and the chat here. So if any questions pop up in your heads, type them in the chat and we'll make sure to address those at the Q&A. And then finally, for all of you makers, we'll have a Makeathon briefing at the end of it. So don't log off at 8. We're going to have a quick explanation of what's going on this weekend, so you all know what to expect. All right. Well, then without further ado, let's jump over to Mormedi with the trends in the future of homes. So we've got the CEO and founder of Mormedi with us, Jaime Moreno, and the design director, Blake. And Mormedi is a global strategic design and innovation consultancy that helps companies make customer experience a key source of competitive advantage. So they do service design, physical design, digital innovation, business model innovation, all types of innovation. And they're headquartered in Madrid, so they're joining from Madrid. And they have presence all around the world, so Mexico, London, Tokyo, Silicon Valley, Seoul, so all around the world. And yeah, over to you, Mormedi.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you for the introduction. And Blake, you want to share the presentation?
Absolutely. 1 second. Okay, tell me, do you see the screen?
Yeah, it's on the way. Okay, yeah.
Perfect.
Maybe go full screen. Okay. So, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Claudia and Imperial College, for giving us the opportunity to be here. And if you go next, well, hola, as Claudia was saying, we're based in Madrid, but 75% of our business is coming from outside Spain. And just a brief introduction about us. If you go next, Blake, we help companies by uncovering what customer needs and designing it, and we create experiences that result in a positive impact in P&L, in NPS, and conversions. We have, can you move? Yeah. As Claudia was saying, we started as a physical design studio, mainly industrial design. Today, we work on physical design, service design, digital innovation, and business model. And we use strategic foresight to anticipate the future and define actions with creating scenario planning activities to help companies to plan and design for the future. Next.
Which are you on this one? This one now,
no,
right?
Next one, yeah.
Yeah.
Next one, Blake.
This one, yep.
Yeah. And our team, we have a multicultural team, and we have been on the market for 23 years. And if you go next, these are some of the clients that we have been working with. Next. And yes, just to give you a brief introduction today, next one, Blake. Well, as you all know, I mean, the COVID has brought has changed a lot a way of living, and it's causing basically what we have identified is that it's changing our priorities. There's a greater focus on social commitment and new ethical and environmental challenges, but also people are looking into working or buying products for brands that they have a brand purpose. And one of the good things I would say from COVID is that we have become more human. And looking at trends that we think that they will change businesses. When we normally look at trends, we look at different layers. And one is social and demographic. And on one hand, we're seeing an evolution of aging population. I mean, not just in Europe, but in other countries. And this is creating interesting opportunity for designing products for what we call the silver age, for people that they have a better quality of life after 65, they're going to live longer, they have a good income. So clearly there's a strong opportunity in that area. We also, COVID has accelerated what we call human connections. People need to feel more identified with brands that they have a purpose. In terms of new consumer lifestyles, we're seeing that people are taking care of healthier lives. They're also looking at what we call flexi experiences. They don't want to take commitments, long-term commitments of like 2 years rental when you get an office, or 3 years rental when you rent a car. And we are seeing more and more new services that with 1 month notice, you can basically stop the services. There's also a desire for customization. In terms of mobility, we are seeing really a strong trend in what we call decarbonization, but also sustainable alternatives. In terms of technology, there's much more concern about data privacy and cybersecurity. In terms of sustainability, well, we are moving into minimal waste and circular economy. And in terms of workspaces, we're looking at technologies for mobility, at new office standards. Telework is here to stay. And also, if we look at retail, where we're moving into what we call physical digital, which is how you can merge physical and digital experiences. If we go next, when we look at customers, they are demanding more connected services around the house, from home assistances, I mean, like using voice interface, also for payments. We're really seeing a growth in entertainment, gaming, music, film, and content. We are also seeing a growth in what we call e-health and wellness, personal monitoring and fitness, security and control as well, environmental monitoring and environmental control in terms of air conditioning and lighting, but also in consumer appliances, connected consumer appliances, and food and nutrition, telework and connectivity, and e-learning and education. You want to go this one, Blake?
Yeah. So I think, as Jaime mentioned, we're seeing that people are able to jump in and out of services much more. It's no longer just the typical main provider for your electricity or your internet. We're seeing that you're able to switch depending on your choices much faster. So having a better relationship, a better understanding of what your consumer is needing in their lives is becoming more and more important. As mentioned, the fluid experiences really is about trying to give people the relevant things that work for their life rather than trying to sell them something you've got to offer. So mixing and matching digital platforms with physical products, with services that allow you to change and adjust are becoming more and more important. So in terms of what's specifically changing in the home, what we've seen obviously with COVID, there was already a move towards some degree of telework. Of course, with the rise in fiber and quality internet, people are able to do a lot more from home anyway. When COVID hit, we're seeing that really accelerate. So we're seeing, vast growth in different software that is allowing remote connection. As you're probably all very aware, we're on it right now. But we're also seeing at the same time a kind of a worrying trend around cybercrime and other things that are taking advantage of that further connectivity for people's systems that maybe are not so safe and maybe are not necessarily up to standard. Another thing that we're seeing in terms of is that change and shift in behavior is company leaders, intend to continue to allow remote work even after the pandemic allows people to come back to the office, which we've seen a lot of that. But at the same time, we're getting physical and remote teams, and some of those tools are really not working well in terms of mixing those two together. So maybe in the next period of time, we're going to start to see those mixed experiences come to life. So how can you or your company take advantage of those different increases in working from home, but also to offer better conditions, more engaging conditions that allow people to feel like they are more a part of that office experience when they're away, rather than just being purely screen-based? Are there other ideas out there that could actually help you create new solutions? Education, clearly, there was 1.6, I believe, children who were out of school in one moment during the peak. So what do we do with that? How do we actually engage children, but also adults in terms of education? And another boost from COVID, we're seeing that teachers and parents were really underprepared for that shift. We see a lot of the tools were not really adequate for dealing with multiple children in the home and one teacher managing all of that. So what is the next steps? What's happening? What's evolving from that that could be innovative and offer more value to children, adults, and mixing education with edutainment and encouraging kids to learn in new ways. Entertainment and media, continuing growth, obviously boosted by COVID with people staying at home more. We see over-the-top video revenue absolutely leapfrogging in growth. And there's obviously virtual reality and other video gaming is really moving as well. Esports is a really big mover. But we're also seeing that this engagement between people while they're taking care of activity or they're engaging in activities as being a huge part. So it's becoming much more social. And how can you increase your engagement through those social video and gaming activities? How can you build relevance for your brand using some of those techniques? Health and wellness, fitness, obviously that's something that we probably all saw, that many of the fitness stores sold out of weights and bands in the first month or so of COVID. That's continued. We see that people are much more engaged on doing fitness remotely. We see the likes of Peloton, I jumped over one. The likes of Peloton absolutely grow end on end, and with specific equipment that's linked to a digital experience. But it also has a very much a social experience. So we're seeing that a lot more too. Then in terms of telehealth, people are using monitoring things more and more, but also not just for their physical bodies, but also for their mental state. We're seeing a lot more remote health for people's state of mind as well. So how can you utilize the position of health and wellness to support the needs of customers in the home? Home assistance, as Hyman mentioned earlier, a lot of growth in this area. We see this as kind of a central part to the smart home experience. So, what can we do to build different presence in the ecosystem overall? And what are some of those killer applications that allow people to kind of like value this more than what they do in terms of the fact that they are being monitored or listened to in their home? So we need to balance that out and find those applications that really drive growth in this area. Security and control, home safety and comfort. We're seeing this area grow. We've done a lot of work on this in the last months, really looking into new ways of dealing with home security with people at home or people away from the home. And we're really seeing the big tech companies expanding their presence into this area, with obviously the obvious ones of Amazon, Google, and Apple, but there are really a lot of other areas and opportunities where people might have a niche offering that can really fit within those ecosystems. But we also need to think about the overall peace of mind that really offers customers. Do they really need all this equipment? What about digital online safety? This is one of the other key challenges. And next. Wait, excuse me. We have one more here in terms of food and nutrition. We're seeing a lot of growth in the area of people ordering a lot of food online, but also in terms of food becoming much more of a hobby and a recreation. So what does that mean in terms of how you can help the needs of customers cooking and enjoying food in their home? But also, what does this mean for those last mile delivery services? And in terms of consumer electronics and appliances, a somewhat traditional industry, but we're seeing that connectivity is really helping to boost a lot of the new services, but also a lot of the features that can enable people to cook more in the home or to adapt to the different needs that they have due to things like COVID. And then, so how do companies react to the need for these different devices that can offer further convenience, efficiency, but also personal care and leisure activities? So thank you very much. Hope you guys have a fantastic Makeathon, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of background information to put it all in context.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime and Blake, for the very insightful talk. I think this is the ideal introduction into the future of homes, and with all so many very explicit challenges for participants that we're looking for inspiration for what challenge to approach on the weekend. Definitely very, very useful challenges. All right, next up, Dyson.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I was just going to introduce you. So talking about trends and connected devices leads us to a famous household appliance company, which is our very own Dyson. We've got Sam Railton, a senior design engineer who's been working in NPI. He's worked for Dyson for over 6 years now, and he studied industrial design and technology at Loughborough. So go for it, Sam.
Thank you. I will share my screen, if you can all hear me loud and clear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Brilliant, thank you. So thank you for the introduction. Yes, so my name's Sam. I'm a senior design engineer for Dyson. In the last six and a half years of my career at Dyson, I've been really focusing within the environmental care category. So designing products that kind of help make our homes healthier. And as part of that, what I would like to talk to you today around is actually air science and a little bit of a background about what air science is and what technologies we have actually developed at Dyson, and to hopefully help inspire some of your Makeathon projects. So I'm going to start off by giving you a quote from James, which I think is really important, but also really powerful. I won't read it word for word, but largely what we believe at Dyson is that everyone has a right to a healthy home and healthy air within their home. And if you look at our products and the products that we've launched over the last few years, they're all really geared up to ensure that we are trying to encourage people to not only keep their homes clean and healthy, but also understand what healthy homes actually means. With the release of our latest products. So what I'm going to do is take you through a little bit of the problem of air quality within the home, and then give you a kind of loose top level understanding of some of the products we've released to tackle some of these problems. So outdoor air quality is a known problem all around the world. We know that there are large sources of air pollution that impact our air quality day to day. Lots of them are publicized, and I would say when I look at this list of sources of outdoor air quality, I look at things like transport and energy generation, and I think that a lot of these are very well known and very understood by most people. We understand that if we live in a city, we're exposed to more air pollution than we would expect to be exposed to in the country. But what I'm wanting to talk today about is, about the breadth of, air quality, sources, and what that means for you in your home. And although there are sources that are common knowledge, there are plenty of air sources that potentially you would be surprised at within your home. So first of all, I'm going to take you through a little bit of a top level summary of your home. And this is a very nice image that I quite like to talk about of a typical domestic home. And actually within this environment, we know that there are a lot of sources of indoor air quality. But actually, a lot of these are really important given that we're spending a lot more time indoors, especially due to the pandemic. So typically the numbers that we like to talk about before the pandemic are that we would spend 90% of our time indoors, and the majority of this time would be split between home and work. And now we know that's changed quite drastically. But overall, we're spending kind of 14 hours a day inside our homes at least. And when we think about, hours at home and work, when we're at home, we haven't got these large, great big, ventilation systems that clean and condition our air as we do in a lot of offices and communal working spaces. So when we talk about time indoors, the pandemic has really shifted, I think, the way in which we spend time indoors. But if we look at a kind of conventional space, such as the above, if we could actually see pollution, see pollutants and air quality, we think it would look very different. So kind of under the kind of Dyson lens, so to speak, you can see all of these sources of indoor air quality contributing to the air within your home. I think it's really relatively obvious to say that the outdoor air quality will impact your indoor air quality. So if you are living near a busy road or high street or within a major city, we know that air pollution can enter your home through gaps in doors and windows. But there are plenty of sources of indoor air quality which are also trapped within your home. And as we strive for more energy efficient homes, more sealed homes, what we're actually doing is we're preventing the ability to create drafts through our homes. So traditionally, kind of Victorian style houses in the UK, for example, would have these, designed draft houses to help, keep air going in and out, at a constant rate. And actually, we're sealing our homes to prevent this from happening, so that we can, make them cheaper to run and stop spending as much money on our heating bills. And as a result, if you generate sources of indoor air quality within your home, they're less able to draft out. So this is an image that demonstrates some of those pollution sources. And when I think of pollution sources, especially within the home, I think of a few different things. So we're going to start off talking about particulate matter. So particulate matter is are small particles that float around in your atmosphere. These range in sizes. So for those of you that suffer with things like hay fever, you'll know the impact of tree or grass pollen. They're typically associated with some of your larger particles. But there are plenty of smaller particles as well that contribute to the air quality within your home. So typically the kind of finer particles are deemed as more hazardous for your health. And they're kind of associated with things like combustion. So vehicle emissions, or when you cook on your hob, that typically is some form of combustion that releases a combination of particles and gases. But gases are also a significant contributor to the air quality within your home. So, for example, every time that you smell a lovely candle, you go, that smells really lovely. Typically, whenever you burn a candle, that releases a chemical known as benzene. And also when you clean your homes, a lot of the products we actually use to make our homes cleaner are actually emitting gases into our atmosphere. So you think of all the hand gels that you use on your hands at the moment due to COVID. Anytime you kind of smell that chemical, that's typically a gas that's being emitted from the product that you're using. And so all of these things are entering our homes, and they're not able to leave as readily as they did in traditional homes, and therefore we're generating sources of air quality within our homes that can't leave. And And as a result, we typically see that, air quality can be up to 5 or even in some areas 7 times bad indoors as it is outdoors as a result of this. So we've got this really severe problem within our homes as a result of multiple sources. But air quality isn't something that you can see. Air quality is something that is largely invisible. And I think this slide, I won't go through all of the details, but it goes through a list of things that we use within our homes, relating to things like hairspray or air fresheners. And actually, a lot of people don't understand the impact that these actually have on the air quality within their home. So a lot of the issue with air quality isn't so much the problem of air quality being there, but it's also understanding what things contribute to air quality and how we can not only employ products to help support our lives, but also change our habits to make sure our homes are as healthy as they can be. So what I'd like to kind of finish off on is talking a little bit about some of the solutions that Dyson have implemented to solve some of these problems. Hopefully in inspiration for your Makeathon event. But I think a lot of these technologies we've implemented to solve some of these problems, and there are plenty more problems out there to be solved, which hopefully you'll be able to see. So first of all, I'm gonna talk about purification as a whole. So when I've spoken about some of these particulate matters and gases, what we found at Dyson is that actually each different pollution source requires a different solution. So, for example, what we have in our products is we have a 3-stage filtration system that is designed to tackle all of the individual sources of pollution that are designed in a bespoke way based on the problem that they're trying to solve. So, for example, our first layer is our kind of pleated particulate filter. So the purpose of that is to capture things that are, pollutants of varying sizes. So, for example, we spoke about things like pollen and mold spores. All of those are captured in our particulate filter media. The chemicals that are released from things like burning candles, also from cleaning products, they're actually as a gas pollutant, they require a completely different solution as they're down at the molecular level. And so we actually have carbon as a technology that's implemented to help absorb a lot of those chemicals. And actually, in some of our products, we use things like ground up coconut shells to help capture those gases within the products. And then finally, our latest product is actually we've designed a filter that's bespoke to formaldehyde. And for those who don't know, formaldehyde is a product that is used as a wood preservative, and it's used in a lot of countries around the world. Some countries have actually banned it because of its impact on health, but actually in very small doses, formaldehyde can have quite severe health impact. So what we've done is we've actually designed a filter that tackles the problem of formaldehyde, and not only does it capture formaldehyde, it actually converts it into a kind of combination of water and CO2. And actually, what it actually does is it destroys formaldehyde. It actually breaks the chemical bonds of formaldehyde and changes it into water and CO2. So we're actually with these products, completely converting formaldehyde to a completely new chemical, and it won't change back after it's passed through this filter. But when I talk about air quality, there's always a lot of focus on air pollution, and there's always a lot of focus on what air pollution means for indoor air quality. But when you think about your Makeathon briefs, what I would say is that air quality and pollution is one part of that bigger air quality problem. But actually, things like temperature and humidity also have huge impacts on your overall impact of air quality. And the next slide is an image of our latest product, the Dyson Pure Humidify Plus Cool. And what this product does is it solves all of those problems of air quality. But inside the product is also what we call a humidifier. It's a large wet open area, which actually surface area material, which actually adds moisture into the air. So we know through certain seasons where it's particularly dry that you can receive side effects of dry air, such as dry lips and dry skin. And we know that maintaining a really healthy humidity within the home is also, a huge contribution to, the air quality that that you experience and are exposed to within your home. So there's a little snippet of some of the technologies that we've implemented to try and resolve the problems of air quality, within the home. There's a kind of second product which I'd very quickly just like to run through, which is the backpack project, which hopefully some of you will be familiar with. We partnered with King's College London, who tasked us with designing a portable air quality monitor. And what King's College London wanted to do is they wanted to track the commutes of students to and from their home and their school. And we worked very closely with them and took a lot of our technology that is within our Dyson products. So we have a lot of sensing technology within our Dyson products to understand when the air quality gets bad. We developed a solution to that, to implement it into a backpack, which hopefully some of you have seen. And we've been able to use this backpack to initially work with King's College London to understand what students and children are exposed to on their way to and from school. But actually we've gained a huge understanding from that, and we're scaling that up massively to also understand not just how school children are exposed to pollution, but also to understand the exposure in different countries and cities around the world, and for also different types of people. We've worked with a number of athletes to understand what their exposure is like when they go running through a city, etc. And so I think this is a really, really nice example of where we've taken a really core problem and a Dyson technology and tried to kind of understand the problem at a kind of greater level. And I think if I was to kind of offer you any advice for your Makeathon briefs, it's really be really clear on what that problem is. So with this brief, we want to really understand what the problem is with outdoor air quality for students on their commute, and that led to the solution that you see in front of you today. So hopefully far more interesting insights and information to come from this particular project. And yeah, that's everything from me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. That was really insightful and some good advice for our participants as well about being clear. So talking about Dyson intelligent products leads us nicely into our next speaker, who is Piers from Tewke. So Piers is a serial entrepreneur in the world of technology, property, and politics. And most recently, he's turned his attention to energy and home automation, and which focuses on how people consume energy in their homes. So if you are happy to start sharing your screen.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just make sure you can all see this.
We can, yeah.
Okay, yeah, everything's there. So hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me join you today. Very exciting to be part of your Makeathon, and I will try to keep it relatively brief. But essentially, just a little bit about me. I started my first company when I was 15. I'm a sort of serial entrepreneur. I sold a telecoms business back in 2015, and since have invested in about 10 startup companies, ranging from, as was mentioned, property, clothing businesses, health, education, and technology. Tewke is my sort of brainchild that's sort of been sitting there in the back of my head for the last 15 years, and I just think it's the right time, right place. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to just tell you a little bit about it. At the moment, the business is pretty much in stealth mode. And what that means is if you go and try and Google us or find out anything about Tewke, you won't find very much at all, because we are very much in our R&D phase for the business. I established the company back in 2019. We've got a small team of highly experienced sort of engineers working on some challenging problems. But essentially, my aspiration and my vision for the business is around a smart grid. And the smart grid essentially allows us to be much more intelligent about how we generate and how we consume energy. But that by itself is not very interesting for most consumers. And so to make that sort of that future a reality, we need to create a platform on which that can work. And that brings me nicely to sort of home automation. So essentially, we're starting with a home automation solution, and then that will move into smart grid, which I believe in the next decade will become, a really big area of focus as we look to sort of evolve the UK and the world into a sort of carbon sort of neutral status. So essentially, how the national grid works is based on predictions, and they essentially generate energy across multiple sources, from fossil fuels to solar or wind technologies, but it's all based on what they predict will be used across the network. When I worked in telecoms, we operated out of 18 data centers across the country, and there were multiple days throughout the year when we were asked, or those data centers were actually taken off the grid and run on backup diesel generators, just because the grid didn't have sufficient capacity in the network for that local area. And so the challenge for the grid is they use things like sort of weather modeling, even the TV guide, to work out how they think people are going to be consuming energy on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis. So what I wanted to do is just really explain a little bit about what a smart grid is. It is probably the best example of how the Internet of Things and IoT will really revolutionize our lives over the next sort of 10 to 20 years. Obviously, we can start with a white good, which I've got a few Dyson synergies actually here, Sam. So I'm gonna link you in. But I know Dyson did make a washing machine, but I think you over-engineered it. But essentially, a washing machine is something we can all understand. And so back in the days pre-COVID, when we actually left home and went somewhere, we might put our washing machine on and choose a cycle that we want to run. The concept of the smart grid is that that washing machine will know how long the cycle is that you've just chosen. And ideally, you would program it to say when you would be home or when you need that service to be finished by. So the idea is that the washing machine would then be able to negotiate and talk to the national grid, say that it needs to come on and that it's got a 1 hour cycle and that it needs to be complete by maybe 3 p.m. So the national grid would then have the opportunity to say, well, actually, could you come on at 1 p.m. Because that will give you plenty of time to finish your cycle. But we hope that most people have finished lunch by then. We might have some excess energy in the grid. So the washing machine can then run. As a user, there's no impact on my life. The washing machine still completes its job, but we've been super efficient in the method of the energy that's been consumed, and there's huge percentages of saving we can create across the whole of our national grid in terms of the energy we over-generate, and actually the economies we could create from that. So essentially, we're looking at this problem of the smart grid from the perception of consumption, because we believe that controlling and having a view on how people consume energy is much more interesting than how you generate it. And what you'll see if you do a bit of research on smart grid, if you're interested by it, is that the whole industry is coming from a concept of generation. But the problem is, like with smart meters, they're something that aren't really smart, because they don't actually know how or why you've consumed energy. So actually, all they do is they just read your meter. So the challenge we had with Tewke was how to come up with a platform that consumers would buy into, that would enable us to monitor, manage, and control the energy that was being consumed within a home. So the way we're looking at solving the problem is around redesigning and reinventing the light switch. It's a piece of technology that's been around for a long time. everyone sort of knows how to use it, but actually it gives us the capability of knowing exactly where and how energy is consumed. And as I say light switch, I also mean the plug socket as well. So that's something else that we're looking at. So phase one for us is building this platform, having control of light switches and plug sockets across a home, and really understanding how people are using their energy and enabling them to control their devices in a really sort of seamless and unified way. The benefit of creating a platform like this is that we can do a lot more of additional sort of services. So it's not just controlling your lighting, it might be from assisted living, security. We can predict how users and homeowners work, live in their homes, all the while collecting that big data that allows us to then solve the smart grid challenge that we believe is coming. So obviously I'm preaching to the converted in terms of technology, and you'll all be very familiar with all these products. But what you won't be as familiar with is maybe some of the big players in this marketplace, and they're companies like Control4 and Lutron, which is sort of based out of the US, build platforms for homes, and they've existed for decades in providing fully home automated platforms for predominantly the US market, but obviously other homes across the world. The challenge with those platforms is they're hugely expensive to install. They cost, they require complete rewiring of your home, and so are really only installed into new sort of high-end homes. I think most of us as consumers are familiar with the Amazon, Google, Apple offering, which offers lots of different parts of that challenge and that home automation ecosystem, but requires an awful lot of piecing it together. Even for my home, I think I've got 12 apps on my phone just to control it. And obviously that creates a number of challenges for me, being relatively tech savvy, but obviously it would be hugely frustrating for someone like my mother or someone else who really isn't as interested in the tech. Just to bring back that Dyson link again, I was very fascinated by your slide deck, Sam. But the Dyson fan, which I have one of those, it's there's an app for that as well, so you can see exactly how effective it is and the pollutants that it's putting out of the home. Although I am a little bit more scared now about burning some candles, so I think I'll have to reevaluate how many doors and windows we have open. But essentially the challenge with this ecosystem, and maybe an idea for your Makeathon, is how do we piece these pieces, all these parts together? Because I think the reality is that people might buy one or two parts of it, but really bringing together into a fully automated home, I think, is going to be challenging, especially with all the different platforms, manufacturers and services. A good example someone had is the Philips Hue light bulb, and while one member of the family is super excited by it, the other member of the family doesn't really understand it, and obviously kept switching the lights on and off at the source using the light switch, which obviously stopped the intelligent light bulb from actually operating. So every time they went to use it, it didn't work, and so it gets very difficult. So one of the things to remember when you're thinking about products, especially for the home, is there are lots of people in your home, and obviously everybody has to be able to use it effectively. So I've sort of got a number of key points that we've done quite a bit of research on and sort of understood, I think, in our journey. And especially if I bring it back to Tewke and the concept of a light switch, is you don't need to explain to anyone how to use a light switch. My 2-year-old can use a light switch. My 95-year-old grandmother can use a light switch. Anything in the home, and I think certainly where we're looking to reinvent analog problems and give them a digital solution, should not require instructions. It just needs to work out of the box. The second thing is with the light switch, especially, we're super excited by some of the technology we're developing, but people use a light switch to turn the lights on and off. They don't sit in their room and look at their light switch and think about their light switch. It's a means to an end. So it's super important that we respect that, and the technology sort of disappears into the background. And finally, the other thing is the home is super personal. It's where people, it's a real invasion of privacy, and it's an honor to be in someone's home. And so, just be mindful of that. People are relatively conservative with a small c in terms of what they like and don't like in their home. And so the technology and anything you look to develop needs to reflect that very much so. As I said at the beginning, I'm involved in a number of businesses, one of which is property development. And I've been fascinated by the synergies between architecture and product design, and obviously developing home automation systems. But I wanted to talk to you about a project I'm working on, which is actually the first castle in 100 years to be built in the UK. We're hoping it might be televised, so watch out for it in a few years' time. But essentially, this is a home that will be completely self-sufficient. It's going to be carbon positive, so it will actually act as a very small power station. And we're going to be achieving that through the use of vertical wind turbines, huge solar array, and batteries. And the batteries, I think, is a really key area that has made a huge amount of development. Obviously, electric cars gets a lot of the headlines, but Tesla and company in Germany called Sonnen have been working really hard at bringing batteries to the home, and have both launched in the last year their virtual power station concept, where they're able to pool all these batteries together and actually deliver back to a national grid the concept of a virtual power station, where they have all this energy stored and they can bring it back into the grid when the grid needs it. But likewise, when the grid has excess energy, like during the night when we're overproducing on our wind power, they can store it back in. And obviously, as a user, you get obviously an income stream from owning those batteries. So, that's a whole market, an industry that's being created on the back of, an individual trying to save some energy and maybe from their solar array. For us, creating a platform that creates lots of opportunity about potentially energy trading between homes, and also the concept of obviously storing energy in your electric car and drawing it back into your home. And oddly, the conversation, the talk from Sam around air tightness, obviously people talk about passive homes, and the castle is certainly going to be one of those homes where air tightness is absolutely crucial in creating a environmentally friendly home. And then obviously the challenge is to obviously make sure that air quality stays good. But on the whole, homes are not as technically advanced as the technology we're all used to, and build quality is relatively poor, certainly in the UK. So it's something that I think certainly needs a lot of attention over the coming years. And the other bit I just wanted to sort of touch on, and it's more that I'm preaching to the converted, but it's a bit of an epiphany for me, is around the concept of natural shapes and nature. Obviously, for thousands of years, we've lived outside of these man-made structures, and so we're used to very organic shapes. We're not used to lots of straight lines, and so that marry of architecture is super important into anything you bring into the home and anything you look to develop for your project. So I'm a big fan of the golden ratio, and obviously making sure that clean lines and symmetry don't always look right. My mother always said to me, if you're hanging a picture, always do it by eye, never measure it, because you'll just see what looks right rather than what is probably technically right. So just want to say good luck. I hope you have an enjoyable weekend on this project. Thank you for letting me have a quick chat with you all.
Thank you, Piers, for introducing us to the challenges of energy management in the home. And if we're speaking about resources, another major household resource is water. So I'll pass the baton to P&G 50-liter home project. We've got with us Sergio Barbarino and Oscar, who will tell us a bit more. And I'll go quiet because I'm aware of the time. So over to you.
Yes, good evening, everybody from Brussels. So we'll try to be quick, Claudia, so we recover a bit of time. So what we want to talk about is a project that P&G has launched actually as an industrial collaboration. So we are not alone. That is called the 50-liter home. I'll introduce the reason, and then Oscar from Imperial College that is doing an internship with us will go a bit more detail about what the idea is all about. So to start with, as many multinationals, we have our own action plan for the climate. We have declared our ambition 2030 with the clear targets, and we know we serve about more than 5 billion people in the world with our product. We know that we have a role to play to be part of the solution. And that especially with our products, we definitely can do something about water and waste. And we do this by leveraging our brands and also communication to consumers, by making our supply chains more sustainable, by communicating at large on how we can all embrace and be all part of the game, and with the strong involvement of all Procter & Gamble employees. We all start our product assessment, next one, Oscar, with the life cycle analysis. We have done this now for many, many years. And if you look at the main product categories of P&G, you see something quite evident, that big red bar in the middle of the graph is the energy footprint of laundry washing. So in many of our product categories, one of the most impactful phase in the life cycle of the product is not so much in the supply chain, so what we control directly, but it's in the use phase. And when we saw that very large footprint there, we said, well, okay, this is in the consumer home, and even the regulators kind of give up a bit on the use phase of products. Think about cars, right? Everybody talks about, okay, let's move to electric car. Nobody talks about the fact that the cars are mostly unutilized for 23 hours a day at best, and oftentimes they're driven only by one person. So the use phase looks like a Moloch that nobody can touch. Well, what we have tried to do is develop technology that can wash at low temperature and educate consumer on the fact that with our product they can be relaxed, wash at low temperature, and it works. By the way, it also provide a decent hygiene. So unless you really want to sterilize something and then you really need to go to very super high temperature, there is not much difference between 60 and 30 degrees. But with that change from 60 to 30 degrees, you cut in half that big red bar in the middle of the graph. You may see that the same thing is true for liquid dishwash. There's quite a lot of energy that go there, and also for shampoo. And tongue-in-cheek, for shampoo, of course, the solution should be that we all have cold showers. And of course, that's not the solution that we can propose to consumers, but that leads you to think. I want to highlight also diapers. In diapers, we have solved a lot of the use phase with the diaper, so people don't need to wash with detergent, water, energy, the diapers. But of course, the compromise was in material. And so one of the big issues that we are trying to solve on diapers is giving them a decent end of life and avoid that they go to landfill or also simple incineration. But now I leave the floor to Oscar to give you the rest of the story.
Hi, yeah, so as Sergio just explained, for a lot of these products, the use in the home is the biggest issue. And so we're going to focus especially on water use here and hot water use, which is key because it's also an energy problem, almost more than a water problem. So here are a few statistics kind of illustrate the size of this problem. 90% of household energy use is in heating water, which is the equivalent of almost a ton of CO2 per year per person, which makes in the UK, for example, 6% of the global carbon footprint of the country. So this is non-negligible. And reducing that significantly could make a real impact on the carbon footprint of our lives. And then switching to kind of the water issue, We currently, in the US, the average person uses 500 litres per day and 200 litres in Europe. So switching to the 50-litre home number could mean cutting that amount of water use by 10, which also then cuts the energy use by a lot as well. This is especially important due to the direction we're heading in with climate change, with a bunch of other ecological issues happening right now, is that 2/3 of the global population will live in water-stressed areas by 2025, and 60% of the global population will live in cities. So urban water management is going to become an increasingly important issue to avoid running out of water, but also an increasingly potent area of innovation where we can make significant changes that can make some serious differences in terms of energy use and climate change. Day zero. So what's day zero? Day zero is when a certain city or a certain area gets to a stage where they don't have enough water to meet the basic needs of the inhabitants. So obviously that's a really big deal, and it's closer than you think. Cape Town was almost at day zero in 2017, and the government imposed on inhabitants to only use 50 litres per day, which is where that 50 litre number, kind of the inspiration for that 50 litre target came from. But currently we all live in, especially in London, it's not especially water stressed, at least not yet. So how are we going to already be incentivizing people to cut down so much on water when they don't see that direct consequence just around the corner of actually running out of water, but when it's still just as important in terms of saving the environment, in terms of climate change, in terms of energy use? So we need to make the 50 litres feel like 500 litres. We need to make sustainable irresistible. So how does the 50 litre home project currently aim to do this? Sorry. The core of kind of the idea is around reusing, recycling the water itself. So for example, within the appliance itself, within a shower, you filter the water a bit, you heat it a bit, and it comes through, if anything, cleaner than it first came out of the tap. And in that way, you can have a long shower while using a lot less water than having a very short shower. And you obviously save a lot of energy as well, because you don't have to reheat water at every loop. But then even further pushing this, we could use the water from the shower, for example, a bit of filtration, send it over to the washing machine, wash your clothes with it, no problem at all. Once you've washed your clothes, send it over to flush the toilet, no problem at all. And then each drop of water has been used so much more, and we've taken the value of it to a much greater degree. Now, why is Procter & Gamble focusing on this? So as I said, as Sergio especially explained, because our products, the way that they impact the environment is mostly through, for some of them, mostly through how they're used at home. So it's our duty to tackle this as well. And also because we have the knowledge and the experience in water treatment in such ways. So for example, you may have heard of the purifier sachets, which were distributed to give drinking water in water-strained areas all over the world and help thousands of lives, maybe even more. I'm not sure of the number. So, but what are the challenges which maybe you might find inspiration from? So obviously there's technical challenges around heat loss between the different appliances, around filtering, which I didn't know here, but around filtering certain particles. So for example, soap, there's still a challenge around filtering soap. But then also there's kind of more maybe design-centric challenges around informing users. So obviously an informed user will make better choices, will buy better appliances and use them in the most ecological way. So it's very important to inform users. Next point is kind of what Sergio touched on is, a cold wash is quite easy and always possible, but a cold shower, how do you do that? Currently you're not going to ask someone to just take a cold shower, but perhaps there could be technological advancements to make the heat, to make it so you have to heat less water to still get the same experience, or perhaps you can incentivize people to just have shorter showers. And that's kind of part of the next point, which is making new desirable habits from your users. So for example, as well, shampoo, currently you expect it to foam a lot, you expect to rinse it out, it's a whole experience. But in reality, sometimes that foam is almost artificially added, and you don't need it. It doesn't contribute to the washing effect. So how can we kind of redesign products and redesign user experiences to be more ecological? So maybe they can rinse it faster and therefore use less water. and kind of show them that that has other benefits. So, for example, rinsing faster, you save time. Next, there's the obvious question of cost. So these appliances currently are very expensive, and developing them is expensive. But that has the other side to that equation is that the running costs are lower because you're using less energy, less water. So again, how do we inform users about that, and how do we bring the costs down? And finally, the issue of new buildings versus old buildings. So if you're building a new building, it's obviously much easier to set up all these piping systems, etc. Whereas retrofitting it into an old building will pose many more challenges. So there are a few challenges that you might take inspiration from for your project, and I wish you the best for Makeathon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oscar and Sergio, especially for those that introduction to what are these challenges in the home related to water, and especially those challenges that you have just given us, and I'm sure the participants will make good use of those. So it's not by chance that we're wrapping up with Dr. David Boyle's talk on IoT data privacy. So after talking about all these connected devices, how can we ensure privacy in the home? Over to you, David.
So thanks, Claudia. Just bear with me a tick. So that should be working now. So thanks very much to Max and Claudia and DesSoc for inviting me. Great to see some of the talks so far, some very interesting ideas. I actually spent some time as a visiting postdoctoral scholar at UPM in Madrid back in 2009, which is an amazing time. I was working on indoor localization and sensor data fusion. But a little more about me. My background is in wireless sensors, cryptography, communications protocols, quality of service metrics like reliability and latency in general. And I've been working on those with application to critical infrastructure monitoring like water, bridges. And more recently, I've been sucked into the home with some projects around water and air quality, as we've seen, and some around inventory. So like the infamous smart fridge example that people talk about, and you'll see a little bit more about that soon. But I'm going to keep it to a couple of key ideas. So how some things are connected, built and engineered, and how they might be made, and then how they might be intrusive when we speak to them. So Piers has made some very interesting points about this already. And I'm going to finish with this question, is there a future for privacy at home? So just to put context around a little bit of this, the Internet of Things as a concept has really become so all-encompassing as to be, I won't say useless, but unhelpful. And the term, even though we won't see these things emerging and revolutionizing how we live for another 20 years, they've already been in development for 20 years. So the term is claimed by Kevin Ashton, who was working at the Auto ID lab at MIT back in 1999, and they were looking at developing RFID tags as replacements for electronic product codes like barcodes. So giving things an electronic identity online. So things like goods on supermarket shelves, of course. And in parallel, some concepts around wireless sensor networks were introduced. So that was cheap devices that could collaboratively detect distributed phenomena. And that community worked in parallel with the RFID community. And I won't get into too much of the history. But the systems folks developed a number of the communications technologies that underpin how many of these smart home devices would be connected, right? And those tend to be specified by the Internet Engineering Task Force. And it suffices to say at this stage that all of the major tech companies are beginning to converge around a particular operating system, or more like a linked library that is used to generate the firmware that runs on these devices and is standards-based and consensus-based, and that's called Thread. And the Thread operating system is built on RTOS, and I won't get into any details from a technical point of view, but I encourage you to go to their website. Most of the code is open source, and you can see all of the big tech products that are already being incorporated. So lots from Google, and Apple has recently joined, and you can expect this to grow as a thing. And of course, overwhelmingly, these devices are deployed in smart home contexts. And what that means is they will consequently communicate information from inside our homes to the cloud-based services of the companies that produce the devices and others. So, have a look as you start framing your projects at this, and I'm sure it'll help to get your creative juices flowing. But as a researcher and from the point of view of a research community, well, big tech is starting to pick this up. So what's the next? What's the next frontier? So one of the ideas that we have is around manufacturing at the edge and prosumerism. So the idea that 3D printed devices or objects in the home can become connected and easily accessible. So we started thinking about, together with Freddie, my PhD student, who's an architect and a computational designer, and Connor Myrant, who's a colleague of mine in design engineering and an additive manufacturing expert. How can we go about integrating electronics with devices that are objects that can be just put out at the end of the 3D printer? And this could revolutionize things and certainly help with climate preservation, where we might start shipping design files rather than hardware around the world. So this is just an example of some of our work that was presented at the CHI conference this week, where we're 3D printing a PLA substrate, then conductive traces, and then we electroplate the traces, do some heat bending, and then populate our electronic components. And here you can see some examples of what we can build. So a tree, which is very hard to make usually, a lamp, a hot wire cutter, and then a more advanced connected device measuring environmental temperature and proximity. So think access control and occupancy monitoring. So one of the problems with this, of course, is that if you're heat bending by hand, it's hard to ensure reproducibility. So we've moved on and done a little bit of this using vacuum forming, which is a more reliable method of thermoforming. And you can see one of the examples that we have here is a smart tray that we could put in a fridge, for example. And you can see in the image on the right-hand side, the tray has a corresponding number of chocolates, right? So, but that could be any in-fridge item. So as you can imagine, this gives rise to many challenges around, safety, certification, royalties, circularity. And we think certain elements of this can be helped by digital ledger tech, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But this raises an interesting question about what happens when we run out of our favorite Belgian treats. So we'll probably be notified, and we'll probably want to tell Alexa or Siri to order us some more. And so we say, well, how does that happen? Normally, that means using voice, and that means microphones and automatic speech recognition systems, and that sounds good until we come to think about how these work and what they actually do. So mics capture our voice data beyond the trigger word, which happens at the device, which is often very unreliable, and that's another story. But the raw data is sent to the cloud. And voice user interfaces will be critical to overcome the disconnects between apps and platforms that Piers mentioned. So we can see the increase in the number of Alexa skills. And one voice assistant or smart assistant will probably win out in the home, be it Siri, be it Google, or Alexa. Now, we need to ship some of that data out for accurate speech to text translation, and that's done by big machine learning models that run on cloud servers. But our voices are a rich source of paralinguistic content as well. And that includes our age, our gender, our educational attainment, our health indicators, but most concerningly for me is our emotions, right? So this is a major concern when companies have real-time access to our mental states. And to frame this in terms of an actual concern, Amazon has already been granted a patent in 2018 in the US to sell stuff based on inferring this information. So we're on a mission to change that. They don't need that data, and we feel that we should be able to control who we share these sensitive attributes with. So that brings us to this idea of configurable privacy, right? So we've developed some techniques to configure what information is shared, so we can decide not to give certain sensitive information to the likes of Amazon, but we can share willingly with the likes of the NHS if we're communicating with them. So they can tell us, or we can tell them in that way indirectly if we've got early signs of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or what have you. Now, of course, we're also concerned about the trade-offs between usability, security, and trust. And we have major concerns around deepfakes. So, our latest work on that is it's under review at the moment, but please feel free to go and check out some of the work we've done and some of the demos that are online. And all the stuff you've seen, there are some examples on YouTube. So please go and dig in. So the big question then becomes, well, what does that all mean for the future? And how can we think about solving that? So this was a task that a colleague of mine, Dr. Van Zalk, psychologist, we came together with a group of our DE3 students. So they're listed here, and they came up with this idea of opaque, which is a means to have almost like a switch, but a way to configure the right level of privacy for the right time in the right room. So there's a nice app, web app developed around that, and I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that too, because I think it will also provide you some nice food for thought. So it's probably interesting to have an academic last, because I could probably go on for a couple of hours, but I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to thank you for your attention. Thanks for the invitation again, and wish you the very best of luck for the Makeathon. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So good luck and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, David, for the final keynote presentation, ending on a very high note, this thing, and also tying in nicely with everything that we've been talking about throughout this Makeathon about the future of homes. So right now, I think we're just going to open the floor to any questions that may be in the YouTube or through this same Teams chat. So if you've got any questions, type them up, and we'll try to get to them in the 15 minutes that we roughly have left.
Can I just say thanks as well to all the guest speakers. It's really interesting hearing all of your points of view on this topic, and thank you everyone for all the Dyson references. Piers, I think I counted about 5 in there, so thank you especially to you, Piers. Thank you very much.
Big fan, Sam.
Good. That isn't a pun, I hope, on the EC products.
What? Sorry, a plug.
I said that I hope a big fan isn't a pun on the EC products.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually.
Claudia, I don't know if we as panel members, if we are actually able to ask questions to other members of the panel. I had a question on the energy storage front for Piers, actually, because I've seen a lot about EVs at the moment and charging EVs, and actually about how the grid at the moment is quite overloaded at certain points of the day and underused at certain points in the evening. And actually, I've seen a lot of articles about electric vehicles, and owners being actually almost paid to charge their electric vehicles at certain points during the day if the grid isn't being used. I was just kind of quite interested to get Piers' thoughts, I guess, on that. And I guess what you as a company you're trying to do is kind of smooth the use of the grid over the kind of full, not just 24-hour period, but over the weeks and months. And I'm really interested to know your thoughts on how habitual change can impact that.
Yeah, I'll be quick, Claudia, so I don't impact everyone else's time. It's a big topic, Sam. One of the good examples is in Australia, where they've had a massive uptake of solar. And so, but the problem they've got is at 7 a.m. every morning, they've got this huge amount of electricity hitting the grid. And so batteries for them have been a massive part of stemming stopping that huge amount of energy hitting the grid. And actually in the UK, I mean, so for that castle I showed you, which I was developing, I think we're putting about 12 kilowatt solar array on it. And for that, we have to get special permission to actually connect it to the grid so that we don't cause damage to the grid. The bit around the electricity, and obviously there's a company called Octopus Energy, which you might be familiar with, who have launched a tariff that actually follows the market hour by hour. And it's true that currently they will pay you up to 12p per kilowatt to use energy during the night, because the wind farms are so effective that they're just putting too much power into the grid. So I don't think that's a long-term solution. I think obviously when we've all got electric cars and we're all charging them after 3 in the morning, there won't be an influx of energy coming in. But certainly I think there's talk about, many percentage points of saving we could make on our energy generation just by being more clever in our consumption. And I'm a realist when it comes to the environment, in that you shouldn't really stem people's use of energy, because that obviously stems creativity and capability. But we just need to be more clever in, I think, how people consume it. And those devices can do that intelligence. We don't need human interactions with that. If that sort of answers, but it's massive topic.
Yeah, thanks for the question and the answer, Piers. Yeah, so I think I want to thank you all very much, because you have done exactly what we needed you to do, which is bombard you with the problems that you currently have, so that this 50 minds are listening to you now. I think are full of ideas for all the types of challenges they could tackle throughout this weekend, and this is the best thing you can give them, a mission statement. So thank you very much to all of you. So we've got some comments here. Okay, question from Shafe. He asks, for the voice-oriented smart home, data you may not want in the voice is transferred, but what about fitness trackers? So heart rate for NHS, useful, but not for Google. Okay. I think that's for David.
Yeah, I'm happy to field that. So there's a lot of work around doing this for basically the sensor data that comes from fitness trackers. Now, it depends on what it is, of course, but if we consider it to be mostly around inertial sensor data, so Hamid's group have been doing quite a bit of work on this, where the idea is that we can do the filtration again at the edge, and we can do the detection in a lightweight way. So the idea is that larger models that might be trained on the cloud can be optimized for use on the edge. So rather than having a heavyweight machine learning model in the cloud, what you would have is a quantized and pruned model that can run, let's say, on a chip, on a phone, or on a smartwatch. So there's lots of work coming along those lines. So it is being done, but it is a valid concern. Obviously, it's just a different type of biometric data, and there's lots can be inferred from your health and your fitness data as well.
Thank you for that. As a follow-up for that question, actually, and maybe it's a bit of a classic topic, but do you think there's any place in our minds for a future where people are so skeptical about the way that their information is being processed that they actually turn away from all these connected devices? Is this a scenario that is ever?
I think that's partially a risk, but it's also up to organizations to work with regulators, work within GDPR, work with organizations like the Information Commissioner's Office, and to do that in an accountable and as transparent a way as possible. And I think that there's probably a market for some certification around this in the future, where companies can, let's say, align to some gold standard and make sure that they're auditable and whatnot. And I think there are already examples in certain countries in Europe, like in France, where machine learning models are used in any public sphere in life. They should be open and auditable, let's say. So there's a requirement for some transparency around that. So that could be an interesting way to think about that going forward.
I think another way to think about it is from a user experience point of view. So we know that oftentimes companies need data. They need to build data models, particularly in things like healthcare or pregnancy, for example. But I think the challenge is trying to make it valuable for the people that are providing that data. And there's always going to be a trade-off. So, for example, if you have something where someone is able to understand more what's going on throughout their pregnancy or what's going on with their contractions, then they're getting value out of that. They're getting actually something that's important to them. At the same time, they're providing really interesting information to the people that are collecting that data and can do the real science from that and get real world data rather than just in-lab data. So I think there's a lot of things that are happening with wearables, with IoT that can collect data that you just got to make the trade-off really valuable for the people that are actually utilizing it.
Thank you for that. So a question from Leo in the chat: is the difficulty with reusing water in the home with something of technology or with changing people's mindset? So where is the main problem? And I think this is for the 50-liter home team.
Yeah, I can give an answer which Sergio can maybe complete. I would say it's absolutely both. For some aspects, there's definitely a technological fix which you could kind of say everyone would accept it. For example, if the water from your washing machine then goes into your toilet, it's in the pipelines, you don't see it happening. Why would you say no, kind of thing? But then obviously there's still the question of that technology is probably going to cost more. So you still need to change people's mindsets to make them realize, firstly, that it's worth it to save the environment, or maybe that it's worth it economically if in the long run it saves them money on the running costs. So absolutely that stays a problem. And yeah, in general, I think it's absolutely a problem with both. I don't know what you'd say about that, Sergio.
Yes, and what we are really trying to do is we are putting ourselves a very high bar. So the idea is, how do we make these different water management look amazing to people rather than telling them you need to consume less? How can we completely change the paradigm? I mean, water is renewable, right? And the energy you can recover. So it is technically feasible, but how can we redesign it into an amazing consumer experience?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So from Cora, also in the chat, for Piers, this question. How do you balance the new technology needed for a smart grid with what already exists in homes, or the need to retrofit? So how do you see the transition?
So with Tewke, we're developing our product to be completely retrofitted, and I think that's a big part of getting adoption on a wider scale. I think there is, if we look at the ecosystem, there's a huge amount of different number of products that could do this, and to some extent they do already. I think the challenge is creating so it's the same challenge I had in telecoms when we were consolidating telecom infrastructure together, is that you need a standard way of communicating. So if we take this around to on a global scale, there are lots of different power infrastructures, there's lots of different national grids. And so the method of communication, how that data is stored, it's actually a really challenging problem, because it's not just the device itself, it's also where it's located. There's no point me being efficient with, or my washing machine telling data to the national grid, but if the national grid thinks it's in one location, but actually it's in another location, it doesn't help in terms of actually that energy consumption in that local area. So location becomes hugely important, as well as the method of communication. So I think in answer to your question, you need a standard essentially for everyone to work to, and we're looking to develop that in the sense that it doesn't exist already, but if someone else develops it, then we'll use that instead.
Thank you, Piers. I think we have time for one final question, and I wanted to ask Mormedi, of all the challenges you have highlighted during your talk about the future trends of homes, what would you say is the one challenge you would like to see students tackle this weekend? If you had to spotlight one challenge, what would it be?
Blake, what do you think?
You want me to answer that? Well, I do think there was a really interesting comment about people being able to get the value from these services, but also being able to protect themselves. And I think that's really a really critical aspect of smart homes. I think it's something that we're all a little bit concerned about. It's kind of emerging. There's a lot of tracking and tracing, and obviously, companies that are using, let's say, the data for other purposes than what they're putting up front. So I think that's a really big issue. And then I think the other thing, it was just touched on just briefly, is kind of some degree of standardization, but standards that don't, let's say, hinder innovation. So it's like, how do you coordinate all these larger ecosystems of different devices and services that come into the home. How do you actually put the control back in the hands of users? I think that to me is a really big challenge. It's like the protection, but also the control and allowing people to really get the best of it, but without having to always pay such a heavy price for their data security. Jaime, you can add to that if you want.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, basically it's like that they really need to give added value, no? What's the purpose? And I would really encourage everybody to think at the system level, because as we have been, I mean, looking at IoT for more than 10, 15 years. And the reason why mobile phone was exponential because there was a GSM standard. But in IoT, there's no standard. And that's why the system has not basically scale up. No? But also the real value. I mean, I think we have seen a hype of a lot of gadgets, but not real functional products that they really have a meaning for the user.
Yeah, I think just to hit that point, I think understanding the deeper value for the user and the reason why behind it is always a very good question to ask.
So ending on a very high note, I wanted to thank you very much to all you panelists for taking part in this kickoff panel. It's been really insightful for participants. So I really hope that you'll get a chance to see everything that comes out of this weekend. And I'll send now a link to our DesSoc site where we'll be publishing all the finalist videos. So you'll get a chance to watch all of those, and some of you will be judging them as well. So with that, we'll wrap up the channel. And then I'm just going to ask participants to stick around for a bit, and we'll do the Makeathon briefing bit. So thank you very much. Halima, if you want to say some final words, I leave it to you.
No, same. I just want to resonate. Thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate it. It's a Friday night. So sorry about that. And yeah, I hope the participants are looking forward to the event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.